Evolutionary.org podcast coming your way. This is number 320, episode 320, guys. Steve Smee here as always, and Rick here as always. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Steve? What's up, guys? How's everybody doing out there?
All right, guys, so we have another fun one today. We're doing letrozole. Letrozole, guys, trade name Femara. It's an oral aromatase inhibitor. Medically used in treatment of hormonally responsive breast cancer after surgery. Very, very potent and harsh AI. Basically, the FDA approved its use in postmenopausal women who show hormone receptor positive types of breast cancer. And Rick's going to kind of get into the history a little bit of what letro's history is and how it came to in bodybuilding. But letrozole, many uses that have been discovered. It's been used and off-label in medicine as well. It's been used as a fertility drug because of its ability to stimulate the ovaries. That's been since 2001. It's also, since it's a very strong anti-estrogen property, it's also used in other things for early pregnancy termination in females. And of course, in bodybuilding, we use it to help us with gynecomastia. So believe it or not as well, it's been used in adolescent boys, help them grow taller when stacking it with growth hormone. So guys who have dwarfism, it's been stacked with growth hormone to help them as well. And then with males, when it comes to fertility, it's been shown to help with spermatogenesis. So that means it boosts sperm count. So that's very interesting. Not a lot of people know about that, guys. And it's a very, very cheap drug. So it has a lot of versatility and very, very unique. We use it in bodybuilding. We're going to get into that. But first, I'm going to bring in Rick. He's going to talk about the history of letrozole.
So letrozole was actually patented in 1986, and it was approved for medical use in 1996. And like Steve said, has been used as a cancer medication, as a medication to help women conceive, as a medication as part of a chemical abortion. And yeah, I mean, it's been used to manipulate hormonal levels in women. When it comes to women who are cancer survivors and who are trying to prevent any future reoccurrences, letro is really used in postmenopausal women who at that point, the majority of the estrogen produced in their bodies, not produced by the ovaries, but produced by other tissues in the body. And so letrozole is good for those cases. Now, when it comes to bodybuilders and guys on steroids, Aromacin, we did that podcast already, is the one that really guys on steroids use to control overall estrogen levels. Letro really is a lot stronger. You have to be real careful the way you use it. I'm going to get into my own experience with Letro a little bit later on in the podcast here. And you really are only messing with Letro if you have some kind of gyno reversal, in my opinion. So unless you have some kind of gynecomastia reversal that you're trying to work with, and again, you got to catch it really early on, you probably don't need Letro. So unless you're that guy, might not need to mess with this podcast. Go to Aromacin podcast back, and there you get the info you're looking for. So yeah, going forward, just know Letro is really about gyno reversal, and it's out of all the anti-estrogens that you can use, it's the one that you got to have a lot more respect for, a lot more experience with, that you have to be real careful of. So Steve, let's get into it a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of it for the history and present time of Letro. It's been around the same time as Aromacin, Arimidex. It's been around. It was even around when Nolvadex was first adopted by bodybuilders. But Letro, it started to become available later on. And at the very start, there was a lot of confusion in the bodybuilding world about how it should be properly used. So now we kind of understand it a little bit better. And that's kind of the history of it.
You know, the mini old school guys, I call them the mini old school guys. These are the guys who came around late 90s, early 2000s. Those are the guys who were really early on these forums, Rick. Kind of like I call them your generation of guys, because you were on the forums around that time. you know, those are the guys who are kind of like the modern old school guys, not like old school from the 70s, but the modern old school guys. You see a lot of their social media, a lot of their steroid advice. A lot of them recommend Letro because around that time, Letro was widely available, and that's what they got, and it did the job. It did the job of dropping estrogen, of slamming estrogen. How well does letrozole work? It's got to be the most powerful AI available, guys. Studies have shown women, it'll drop estrogen levels in females 98%, up to 98%, in men up to 65%. So the main reason for that, guys, is that it's got the ability to competitively and bind to the heme of the relevant cytochrome P450 unit, which is a protein enzyme. So it does that so amazingly well. And basically in English, guys, it's going to bind to that aromatase enzyme. When you use something that aromatizes or your body's producing testosterone, it's converting those testosterone, steroids, those testosterone derivative types of steroids that do convert into estrogen, and it's basically binding to those aromatase enzymes. So it's going to prevent that estrogen from being released. And let's say you got a late start on your cycle, meaning you didn't run an AI from the start, you kind of screwed up. And halfway through your cycle or a few weeks into the cycle, you start noticing really, really bad gyno symptoms. What do? You're like, oh my gosh, and you run blood work and your estrogen levels are sky high and everybody's like flaming you and they're telling you, oh, you let your estrogen get out of control. So, one of the things that some guys will do, they'll just stop taking the testosterone. They'll stop taking steroids. But unfortunately, that's not good enough because those esters are still in your system. Those esters are still causing that steroid to convert into estrogen. So it's really, really important that you grab Letro. Letro is very, very important, either on its own or as an anti-gyno stack. Some guys will stack Letro, Nolvadex, and those work really good together. Clomid also, some guys like to use Clomid to reverse it, but you really have to get on it as soon as possible. So it's a weapon. I call Letro a weapon. It's something you hope you never have to use. I've never had to use it, but I've always kept it on hand just in case in situations where I was running an aromatizing compound. And a lot of times if you're running something like Anavar or T-Bol or something like that, which don't convert to estrogen, what happens if you get sold D-Bol instead? Now your estrogen's out of control and you didn't have the Letro on hand, so now you're screwed. So it's always a good idea to keep Letro just in case. It's very, very cheap. Keep it just in case. Now, Rick, you had a situation where you were forced to use Letro back in the day. Tell our listeners about that so they can learn from your experience.
All right, so like I said, Letro is not, I don't consider it something you should be taking on cycle as estrogen control. I think the real place for Letro is to reverse gynecomastia. Now, my one and only time really messing with Letro was around 2005, between 2005, 2006, 7. I'm trying to remember the exact date, but basically it was showing up on different lists. And my guy that I got all my ancillaries from, he said he had some and he'd send me some if I would just try it out and, just post a little something about it. And I did. I just grabbed it. I said, why not? Send me that shit. I grabbed it and I used it. I read up everything I could on it at the time. But obviously, there wasn't a lot of information on bodybuilders, on healthy men, on steroids using it. Everything I could get my hands on was just all about its effect on women and how it was used in different ways. And I used it. It was good on cycle. Then coming off PCT, it was great. I treated it like I would have treated Aromacin or Arimidex, before then. It just treated it just the same. And I thought it worked great. No issues. I did think it maybe lowered my estrogen a little bit too much, maybe. But it was fine. And then months and months later, must have been a good 3, 4, 5 months later, I kind of noticed my estrogen was kind of high. and I've been off of steroids for a while. And I hadn't juiced. I couldn't understand it. I got off my testosterone booster. I was testing a new testosterone boosted formula at the time. I got off of it thinking maybe it was causing some kind of estrogen, and that wasn't it. And then I remember pretty vividly this part. I was at an Argentinian grill having a big parrilla with the family, and I can't remember why I pressed on my chest, and I noticed there was a little pea-sized lump under my right nipple. And this is just to get that when I haven't juiced in 6 months. I knew something wasn't right. I knew something was wrong. This is not normal. So obviously, I went through my journal. I went through my books, and I realized the only really different uncommon denominator was me adding this fucking Letro in. So I said, bam, estrogen rebound from it. Fuck. Used some Novadex, and that little pea-sized lump got soft very, very quickly. I mean, it got soft in a matter of, I'd say, a day. It got less dense, and then 3-4 days, it was kind of gone. And I knew that lump. I've had that little pea-sized lump under my nipple get a little bit denser when my estrogen gets a little too high. But by the time I realized that day, it was pretty darn dense. So I knew it gave me an estrogen rebound. And that was like the last time that I used Letro. And then I wasn't the only guy at the time who reported something like this. Many other guys also reported this estrogen rebound. And it's just kind of, it's not something you'd want to have to deal with, having to deal with when you're taking an AI. When you're taking something to control estrogen, you do that as part of getting off the drugs. These are the drugs you take to get off the drugs. So when I found myself taking Nova months after taking Electro, I realized, okay, maybe in my case, and again, other guys have reported estrogen rebounds months later from Letro. I realized it gave me that rebound, and I had to then use Nova months later. So it's the reason I say I think it's so effective at shutting down your estrogen. I think if you have gyno, may be able to make some really good progress on Letro, some fat burners, your Hemflame EX. I've got it in my hand right here, right now. And go, just make sure you're burning some fat, lowering estrogen, doing what you need to do. And then if you use Letro for that purpose, then you might want to have your Nova on hand so that if you do get a rebound, then you can deal with it on Nova. But again, in my opinion, these are all things you just do when you just have a situation, when you have something. I've seen a lot of guys, man. I'm friends with a lot of people on Facebook and on Instagram, and a lot of guys have gyno. I'm one that's prone to it. If I let my estrogen get a little bit too high, or my body fat get a little bit too high, my nipples is one of the first places where I start to accumulate fat and liquids. I think eventually, as I get older, maybe hit 50, I might have the glands removed eventually, have them removed out. I might make a whole video and podcast all about it. But for now, I've just been managing it with the drugs and using pretty much topical Yahimbi, which I started using in the mid-2000s to keep my nipples dry. Over time, when I created Need to Build Muscle, I knew that I had to have a product, not just for myself, but now at that point to offer people where people could use topical Yahimbi on their nipples and around their midsection, which is something I've been using, which is something I've been doing myself for ages. But I used to just get like the raw powder Yahimbi HCl and use aloe vera juice and just basically make my own mix and apply it myself to keep my chest dry. Because I've always been just kind of been prone to having kind of puffy nipples. And look, nothing looks better than just a nice dry chest. And if you can manage to have just a nice dry chest look, you got the whole look there. So I think over time I'll end up having to give in and go under the knife, but I've kept it off with different protocols, and I've had some close calls. But yeah, Letro, my opinion, it's for versatile. Don't run it like you would Aromasin along with your cycle, and it's not the place for it. Not the place for it, in my opinion.
All right, so let's talk about the side effects, guys, because we kind of touched on it, but I kind of want to kind of summarize everything. So, again, some of these old, modern old school guys, they keep pushing Letro. And they'll do it on social media. They'll do it on whatever. they're wrong. There is such thing as too much in bodybuilding, guys. And letrozole definitely fits that bill. So estrogen, yeah, it's a female hormone, but we need it in our system. And I talked about this in our last podcast we did on AIs, but it needs to be said again. The problem is if you slam your estrogen down, you're going to have horror stories, just like Rick's horror story. You're going to have more horror stories. Low estrogen, depression, mood problems, immune system problems, lowers your libido. It can cause joint cracking, dry joints, not good for weightlifters. It's going to kill your strength. It's going to kill your muscle gains. So Letro, it's so powerful that you never want to have to use this drug. Like Rick was saying, you never want to have to use it. So bad choice to run it on cycle. Really, really bad choice. Run Aromasin, number 1. If you can't get Aromasin, then run Arimidex, number 2. Keep Letro on hand just in case. It's like a rainy day fund. So if gyno ever comes, the bitch tits come on, then that's when you slam the Letro. That's the only time you should be touching Letro in an emergency where you have to get your estrogen down. So half-life, guys, 2 to 4 days. That's another sucky thing about it, is that if you run it and you start getting bad side effects, it's got a long half-life. It's not like taking a Tylenol that's in your system a few hours. This thing is going to be in your system for a week. So you don't want to abuse it. Dosages, listen, 1/4 milligram to 1 milligram every day or every other day. If you got gyno, start conservative, ramp it up. Like I said earlier, it's going to slam your estrogen fast and hard. Some guys like to stack Nolvadex with it. If you've got gyno, in that case, 10, 20, 30 milligrams a day or every other day of Nolvadex along with it. That's a pretty standard and effective gyno stack. And if that doesn't help your gyno, then like Rick was saying, you may have to go under the knife one day to get rid of that gyno issue. So anything else to add, Rick? I think we pretty much covered everything. You want to give your 2 cents on anything else before we close up?
Yeah, not a ton to say about Letro. I mean, unless you have serious gyno, you don't need to mess with it. And Nolvadex should take care of you for most of your small cycles, just kind of day-to-day stuff that you're doing. If you're using a little bit higher doses and maybe stacking D-ball and test, Aromasin will definitely need to be added on top of the Nolva. And those 2 should be just perfect for you. Even if you're a big guy doing 2, 3, 4 grams of steroids a week, which is 4 is a little crazy. I've seen 3, but I'm sure some idiot out there is doing 4 grams a week. But if you get that, I mean, just Nolvadex and Aromasin, it's about all you need to be able to take care of you. Aromasin I like, still over the counter. Still find it. Just go to your local health food store. You'll find Aromasin. But that's it. I mean, Letro, I think the majority of guys out there will probably never have to mess with, unless, I mean, it's just, that's just how it is. So nothing much else to say about Letro, buddy.
Yeah, hopefully none of you listening ever have to use it. But if you do, again, it's just like an emergency day fund, a rainy day fund. It's there just in case. All right, guys, another episode of Evolutionary Radio. Appreciate you guys listening. Next week, we'll have another compound, and we'll have a Q&A coming up soon. So check that out. Also, check out our last episodes as well. We covered a lot of compounds, guys. We covered the last 2 we did on compounds, Aromasin and Arimidex. Those are also aromatase inhibitors. For Steve Smee and Rick, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have a good one.
Have a good one, Steve. Have a good one, guys.
Guys, this is the required legal disclaimer. We are only sharing our experience from years of steroid use. We are not doctors, and none of what we say should be regarded as medical advice. Always check with your doctor before taking any drugs or starting any training program.